Hello and welcome to Drop the Mic podcast, where we discuss technology, theology, and all things in between. I want to personally thank you for joining us today. Now sit back, relax, share this, engage with the podcast that's already in progress. God bless you. What is up, family? I am your boy, your host, DK Hammonds. Tyler, brother, how are you, man?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, always a pleasure to come on to SMC as well as our other podcast affiliates. Tyler, for our audience, they may have seen you before in previous, but introduce yourself so that those who don't know can be familiar with who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tyler Harden. I'm one of the co-founders of Firm Foundations Marketing. I'm a church growth consultant. And really what we do is we help plateaued churches develop their unique church growth strategy. So we're big on community research and context and really helping churches reach more of the right people using the right methods.
Right people, right method, church growth. It seems to be all of the rave in social media marketing and things like that, man. So I've been a fan of yours for a minute. I think what I'm a fan of is your thoughtfulness, your approach to ministry. It almost seems and feels like a pastoral heart from it from a distance. And just seeing that mirrored is always the kind of people I want to share space with and do life with. And so I appreciate that, just to be able to witness and watch that, brother. It really does my heart good. So many people trying to be influencers. Very few of us are trying to do the work that requires it. If you're just coming on the Social Media Church podcast, and me and Tyler have already agreed to be very transparent and real. So we're going to go there today, and I'm for it personally. All right, so let's kind of get into some of the questions that we talked about. What defines healthy church growth, and what does it look like in various contexts? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I think probably one of the most important places to start really is context. I mentioned that a moment ago, because not every church looks the same, acts the same, is in the same type of community. So man, like if you're going to reach the right people with the right methods, right? Like what does that look like? Like we're not all mega churches. We're not all in big cities. The average church is less than 100, right? It's like somewhere in that 50 to 75 window, depending on whose data you look at. And so healthy church growth is I think the big thing is very intentional. It's not let's add hundreds of people overnight or anything like that. I mean, if that happens, that can be good. It also has some downsides, of course, but
absolutely.
But knowing who you can reach and minister to and serve like really, really well for me is like really like a big part of that intentionality. Like we don't want a bunch of people that come in for a first time on a Sunday and never come back because they left disappointed. They had a different picture or expectation in their mind. A big part of what I believe is really like every church is designed for a purpose and a people and being authentic. And I think so many churches really just struggle with how do we communicate who we are accurately, authentically. And so many church leaders, pastors that, we've talked to over the years. I mean, we've worked with hundreds of churches since we've been doing this since 2018. One of the big things they wrestle with is really, how can I embrace my identity rather than feel like I'm not good enough as a church, right? I'm not big enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not cool enough. So healthy church growth is really starts with kind of embracing who you are and getting super clear on that identity and who you can help.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love the mentioning of authenticity and just being around people who are in this business. It's very few that you find that have a true heart for God and authentic about it. And man, I appreciate when I see that on display. I appreciate it more when I see it with churches who I'm going to be authentic to who God called us to be. I think that's so important. I think authenticity is like the secret sauce. If we're talking about growing, like you have the systems of it, right? And the processes that's going to assimilate people through your workflow. But the authenticity is the glue, in my opinion, of good strategy to grow churches and
Yeah.
the gospel.
Yeah.
It's the most
Yeah.
centerpiece of all of this,
I
right?
was exchanging messages with a pastor just the other day, actually. I had been talking to him off and on for years. He'd message me every once in a while, just looking for some advice and guidance. And I was just like, hey, I've got a church, man, that's in a different part of the country, but they're experiencing some things that are very similar to pieces I remember you mentioning, early on, right? He's on the other side of some struggles right now with the church. And so like, it's been great to watch his journey. And I was like, I just want to hear, like, I remember you saying, like, you were really questioning your identity as a church because they're a Pentecostal denomination in an
Yeah.
area where there's not many that are like that. He's like, I don't know, are we too Pentecostally? Like, do we need to rein back who we are to attract more people and all this? Like, I remember him wrestling with that, and that's like so central to who they are as a church, right? And so when I was messaging him the other day, like the thing that he really just like emphasized, like, was like, man, we just embraced who we are, right? It's what made us different, and we're just leaning into it rather than running away from it. And so his church has grown because he just embraced who God called them to be. And I mean, sometimes this stuff seems like so basic, but I think
It's basic,
oftentimes
man.
church leaders need that reminder, man. Like, it's just, we get in our own heads because we're human.
Yeah, for sure. Or we're in competition with
Yeah.
other parties that God did not want us to be assigned to or connected with. We just see that and we want that. But that could be what they are authentic to, not necessarily what is promised or premised for your organization to grow. And so
Yeah.
I just think that authenticity is like so huge. So Tyler, let's walk through a scenario. Let's say a church has 200 people, or potentially want to have 200 new members, and that membership is going to impact staffing and all that type of stuff. What type of structure should we put in place? Now, for me, I used to have this thought process when I was talking about growing churches, and that is, if you don't have a process for 100, you're not ready to grow anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the same streamlined process you're going to put in place that if 1,000 people, 100 people show up, you'll be able to walk them through the same exact thing? So if that's the scenario, that's the end case or the user case, how would you go about handling it?
Yeah. So a couple of things that come to mind is you always want your systems and processes in place before you like really need them, right? Like, I don't care if you've got 20 people, you need to have some version of a process if you ever want to see 200 or want to add 200, like that kind of thing. It's always that, it feels like that cart before the horse, but you're never going to get there if you don't put the things in place. And so some of the things that can really get challenged, like you mentioned staffing, but the common areas that I see such struggle when it comes to growth or preventing growth is, we start to lose equipping our volunteers properly, right? They quickly fall behind the scenes and become like our worker bees rather than like our mission bearers, right? And obviously, like, you've got cultural elements. If you're a small church of like 50 and you had 200 guests show up, over the course of a couple of months or something, maybe you hired some agency to run social media ads or something like that, depending on your church, because there's circumstances where this is a great thing. But for the average church, that can really shift and break your culture, right? Like if you just blew up 4 or 5 times what that congregational body was, you're adding a lot more voices to the mix, a lot more opinions, a lot more pasts and history that they're bringing to the table. So I think when that happens with any kind of significant growth, you have to be mindful of how does this impact our culture for good or bad? And then just being intentional to continuously shape your culture. Like, there's a framework I use with our clients a lot of times. It's simple. It's just, 3 points, right? It's the words you speak, the actions you take, and the relationships you foster. And if you cover those 3 areas consistently, that kind of helps keep things from getting out of whack. So as you grow, or frankly, even if you stayed the same, we're all kind of inclined to just kind of sit back, get comfortable, and not be intentional about things. But when we're not intentional, the culture is going to shape itself rather than us
Absolutely.
trying to help shape that narrative. So, and culture it's what's going to make or break your church ultimately, right? And so,
No doubt.
I think that's a big overarching area to look at.
So this is good. This is so good. If you guys are just joining us, I'm here with the one and only brother Tyler Harden, man, and he is dropping so many jewels and nuggets that I think is applicable to just church and how church is ran. Um, what are some ways we can create the deep impact without needing to be a mega church or a big church?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think every church really needs that signature ministry, that area that they own. I mean, I was in one of the Facebook groups recently, and they were talking about their food pantry, how a highly involved, longtime member had no idea that they were serving, I think it was like 90 or 100 families every week, or people, something like that. Like a lot of people, I think they referred to it as a well-oiled machine. Like their ministry was just humming along, and people didn't know about it, right? So I think you don't
Mhm.
have to be giant to have a big, meaningful impact, but you have to be, again, intentional. I think I'm going to say this word probably 800 times during
Yeah,
this recording,
sure.
but so many churches want to do all the good that they miss or sacrifice the great, right?
Mm,
The things that they were called to do, that the things that God equipped them and their people to serve, and the solutions that they bring to solve real life problems in their community, they've kind of put those on the altar, sacrifice them because they want to do a bunch of things in a mediocre way. And in some aspects that makes us feel good, but that's how we get burnt out. It's how we get stuck. It's how we don't create any momentum in our community,
yeah.
because you're having conversations with people. It's like, well, I've never heard of them. I don't know what they do. Whereas you have some, they're like, oh, that's the church that does XYZ, right? Like there's always
Mhm.
somebody that knows something about some church, and whether it's because it's their physical building, their impact in their community. Like there's so many that folks can often rattle off because they know something about them. But the average church is just stuck, plateaued, because they're doing a lot of good things, but they've done it at the expense of the great things.
Good, man. So good. When we think about sustainability of that same growth that we're trying to build, what are some dangers of unsustainable hype or generic messaging in church marketing? And what are some tools that we can use to help with that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, this is maybe dangerous to say on a social media podcast, right? But it's like sometimes the algorithm is the enemy. Of
Oh, I
course,
love this. Let's
it can work for
go.
good. Don't hit the stop recording
Sure,
button.
sure. Yes. Yes.
uh, but like, it can create this false narrative, right? Like we hear this in like maybe the political context or something, or like
Yes.
conspiracy theories, right? But we don't think of it like when it comes to like we're seeing ads on Facebook for how to grow our church, right? Or we're seeing all these stories of these churches that have grown by hundreds or thousands in this compressed period of time from running some Facebook ads, or whatever. Like those have good outcomes. They have good people that are behind them, but they're not for everybody. And I think, again, that's where we get distorted. And a lot of those solutions tend to put in our heads that we have to water down our message, become sort of this generic, middle of the road, frankly, white, church a lot of times. I don't know, am I allowed to say that? I mean, it's just real. Like there's
That's fair. Fair.
we lose our identity so many times because of just the voices that are out there on the algorithm or paying to run ads. And it's like, man, you got to know who you are. And then you have to
Absolutely.
filter through, does this strategy match who we are? Does this strategy match who we're trying to reach? Because a generic message, or all that hype isn't sustainable. It's not going to continue to work. It's going to get people in the door that, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, like they're going to leave frustrated that, man, I expected something totally different. You sold me a generic message, which means I don't really know who you are. So I'm just kind of testing the waters. And
Mhm.
when that happens, we get a bunch of people that come in, we get a bunch of disconnects, which are unmet expectations now running rampant in our communities, telling a different story, right? And I would rather see your
Yep.
church have 20 people that stick than 200 that come and never come back.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like, and then when you're talking about
Absolutely.
that average size church, like 20 people, man, that's a huge jump, right? Like
That's a
most
huge jump.
pastors would be thrilled if they had that kind of growth in their church over the course of the year. So like, let's get back to
Yes.
like realistic numbers, realistic expectations, and really go deep
Yes.
and intentional with folks. Cause I know like there's parts of the world, parts of the country where there's not a church on every corner. Like I happen to live in the Bible Belt, and I'm very aware that that's not the norm, but there are more than enough churches, generally speaking, across the country. There's enough church planters, there's enough missionaries, there's other Christians, it doesn't always have to be a church, that
Come on.
we don't have to water down who we are to really make that impact.
So good, man. That is so good. And kind of lean into my next question that, not watering down the impact, because really what we're trying to do is make disciples.
Yeah.
That's the central of what we're trying to do. I get we want to have 1,000 additional people or 500 people, but as you mentioned, man, can we praise God for the one?
Yeah.
Is the 20 okay? Right?
Yeah.
Like you want this astronomical number for what? Right?
Yeah.
If you don't have the systems in place and you don't have a realistic expectation of said systems, then you're almost setting yourself up for failure and a false expectation, period. So I also think about how digital discipleship now plays a factor in these church growth models. So for those who are listening, kind of help, because they're hearing this buzzword now. I talk about it a lot. Other people talk about it a lot, digital discipleship or digital evangelism. Talk about that for a second and how that relates or connects to church growth.
Yeah. So, I know in our process, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but we're big on community research. Like we've developed a process honed over the years to help you identify your ideal audience, who you're best equipped to reach, minister to, and serve within your local area, right? Because every church is designed for a purpose and a people. So we got to know who in the area is actually going to be a good fit for how you do church, what your beliefs are, all those kinds of things. And when you really have a deep understanding of folks, and it's backed by data in our case, like it's super helpful to have these insights into how they live their lives, what they're struggling with, all that kind of stuff. What are their communication preferences? Like that fuels that unique growth strategy, right? Like, I think, again, don't shut off the record button, but I have told some churches like, man, don't worry about social media right now. Right. Because like when you do the math, like on some small churches, like, again, they feel this outside pressure, like, oh, everybody's on social. I got to be on social. I'm like, yeah, there's a place for it. 100%. Don't disagree with that. It's got tons of value. But for some, it's like you got a church of 20. Okay. So like, even if every single person was following your Facebook page, maybe 2 of them would see what you're posting. Right. Like it's not showing, like the math ain't mathing.
It ain't mathing.
So there comes a point of like when that needs to come into the conversation, but it's not necessarily an automatic. It can be one of those things that, again, might be the good, but not the great. So like, where do we start in that process? So when it comes to other digital discipleship, I was, again, having a conversation in a Facebook group about this earlier today with a church app. It's, we tend to think about these things sometimes as communication tools and not, or transactional tools even, and not missional tools. And so it's like when we kind of think about, take that paradigm shift and think about it differently. Like if the job of my church app is no longer to help people tithe faster or how to get them to sign up for an event easier, and it's now how do we get them to deepen their walk with Christ through any one of these number of ways to engage via the app. Like I think it changes how we approach it, because most people are going to say, hey, I don't want another app on my phone, right? Like, but that's not true, because a week from now, when somebody's got a sale or a special deal, but you got to download the app, they're going to go ahead and download the dang app, right? So it's like a superficial argument. And it's really like, no, this app doesn't add value to me. So how do we add value? How do we help them where they are? And if we don't know that the problems that they're struggling with in order to equip them with solutions, then we need to start having conversations with church leaders, or not church leaders, congregation members, so that we can make those digital discipleship moments happen more frequently. Have people be like, man, I'm not a big church app guy, but like I downloaded ours and it's really helped me, stay consistent in my faith or in my devotions, or like go deeper on the sermon because it kind of went over my head on Sunday, or I can't really remember. And so, like there's especially with AI, right? Like there's so many ways to take all this content that churches generate week to week and make it bite-sized, applicable. Like we can literally meet people where they are 24/7.
Yes.
And when you understand what they're going through, what they need, you can adapt it accordingly to really engage folks throughout the week. Because the reality is, the average person, average Christian in America just isn't thinking about church outside of Sunday. And if we want to make a difference in that, if we want to make a dent in that, we have to do some things differently.
We have to do some things differently that creates culture, thoughts, process around the human experience. I think we've gotten lost with some of the nuance of tech. And this is a person that's a technician, 15 plus years in tech. But sometimes we forget how important the human person and experience is to this process. And without it, you will not have a tech, a job, a discipleship process if you don't have the human experience. So having relationships, building that, and equally adding what you just mentioned helps us make people stick to the very place that we're trying to bring them to. Talk to me about what it would be like for us to create a church where people can actually stick.
Yeah. And so sticking, again, it's not, I don't say that lightly. It's not easy, right? Like,
sure.
If you have a perfect match, it doesn't mean everything automatically falls into place, right? Like, we live in a world where people are so distracted, so busy, so burned out that they have trouble making time for things that are good, right? Like, I hear all the time when we're talking about like reaching young families, and it's like, they're always traveling for sports. And then when they're still home, they're so busy from traveling for sports or doing whatever, like, that there's nothing left in the tank to give to church. And I've got 3 boys myself. All of them were in overlapping sports seasons, and we weren't even like a travel ball type of family. And we were just so busy. And like, I was like desperate for some introvert time, right? We still made church a priority, but I'm like,
Absolutely.
man, if that wasn't like a non-negotiable for us, like, I completely understand why people that are even more involved are really struggling to make this happen. So, I think some of it comes down to really being intentional about relationships, right? Like, I think we can do all the fancy things and use the right words and do the marketing tricks or have great ministries, but if people aren't connecting to other people, I think we've just totally missed the mark, right? Like, it's not, if disciples are supposed to make disciples, then that's people. That's not just an app, or just a devotional. Those can be tools in that process, but it's not exclusively that. And get there. There's so much irony in, we crave that human connection in this digital world, yet we prioritize it at the very bottom of the list, right?
That's good, man.
Yeah.
We prioritize
I think about
the bottom of the list. That's so good.
I think it just requires consistency from us. Like, it's not an overnight quick fix solution. And maybe for some people listening to this, that's discouraging, but for somebody that's like encouraging. Like, okay, that's right. I needed that reminder that I need to stick to it, because you don't know where people are in that process. You don't know when the Holy Spirit's been like, banging on the door, like, hey, man. But consistency, I think, is really what is essential to this whole process. Like, we talk about small groups a lot, and it's I think sometimes it's one of the most powerful aspects of church, but we kind of take for granted that it's there, and we stop inviting people. They become like just part of the machine, part of the process, like, eventually they'll pop into a class when they're ready. And it's like, we don't really talk about like how this helps people, or even once we're in a group, we don't always, say, hey man, I'm going to the men's event next week. Are you coming? Like, you want to come with me? I'll sit with you or whatever. Like, we sort of we get trapped in our own world. We get trapped in our own busyness, and we lose that intentionality. Again, there's that word again.
There it is.
of inviting. And we got to slow down a little bit. And I think as Christians, it's required of us, right? Like, we have to see people. We can't be so locked into our own worlds. And I'm speaking to myself as much as anybody that might be listening, but it's like,
For sure.
People want to be seen, and we have to be intentional. I was trying to think of a synonym and it just wasn't happening.
No,
To see
no,
people, we have to say, we see you, we hear you, man. Like, you're not invisible.
yeah, for
And
sure.
so sticking is the natural outcome of, we know who we're trying to reach, we know what we're trying to achieve here, and we're trying to bring people into that story, into that process with us, and not just be another cog in the wheel of this machine that we're running every Sunday.
So good. Are we forming consumers or committed followers of Jesus Christ? Your take on that?
Oh man, I think I think it's real easy to be on that consumer side of things, and I think
Yes.
in some ways COVID eliminated some of that from our churches. Unfortunately, we talked to so many churches that have like been cut in half from going through the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yes.
And now they've just plateaued since, because now they're like, okay, we lost all the sort of fringe people of the church, but now what? Like, I don't know what to do. And so like, I think that was pruning in some ways. But I think, again, the world changed so dramatically, so quickly, that church leaders still they're left with their heads spinning, right? Like, they're still mourning that loss. I mean,
Yeah.
I swear the church is the only industry that, 5 years later, 6 years later, is still talking about the pandemic on a regular basis. Like, I get on sales calls with pastors, and they're like, well, pre-COVID, we were running this number. I'm like, I don't even think about my numbers as a business from COVID. Like, but it's so top of mind still. It's so top of mind. And that just blows my mind. And shows me that, man, we have a long way to go. Like, the church is already, traditionally 10 years behind the rest of the world, right? Like, I think there's been no change with that, but man, it's yeah. We're definitely consumers. I think it's sort of where we've been and struggling to get out of. And so how do we create those intentional, again, mission bearers, torch bearers in the church? It's hard work.
Yes.
And I mean, again, that's not an easy answer. That's not glamorous. That's not,
Sure.
nobody's running Facebook ads like, hey, pastor, you want to do something really hard this week? Like,
Yeah, sure.
But it's the reality.
Yep. Yeah. Everybody, bro, everybody is not blessed to have thousands of members. They're not blessed to be the up and coming church that people want to be connected to. And it's very easy to lean into influencing capabilities and marketing tactics in an effort to try to pack out pews. And for me, as a technologist and a theologian, I say to myself, is that really godlike? Is that really kingdom-like? Or are we just trying to get these people in here? Because as a leader, you just want to hear the amens again. You want to hear the crowd roar when you speak.
Yeah,
That's
we're
your
human.
ego.
Like that. There's there's an itch that gets scratched when you see people in the room. It's just human nature. Like, we're not trying to be, egocentric, but it just happens. And it's like, especially when you have large facilities. Again, some of these churches have been around 100 years, 150 years, whatever. And there's just a lot of empty seats. And no matter...
It is a lot of empty seats. I'm going to tell you, here's a church growth hack that doesn't get talked about enough. And I've seen this happen at churches that I've helped. And that is intentionally praying for the lost.
Yeah.
That seems like that's not anywhere on the priority sheet. We just want all these tips, tricks, tools. And it's like, hey, man, the one thing you can do that's free is to take a list, write down 10 people on that list that that don't go to church, disaffiliated, disconnected, and take their names, place them on the altar, and pray for them weeks at a time.
Bro,
and then when you pray for them, then when you pray for them, watch this, bro. When you pray for them, you ain't praying. They don't know you praying for them. You're just praying for them. And then you're going to say something to the effect of, you know what? At some time between now and 4 weeks, I'm going to invite them to church. right? Invite them to church, and they just say, you know what? Absolutely. Thank you, man. And now they've been prayed over. They've been invited. The relationship connection is there. And now God can do the rest.
Yeah.
We tend to want to be the soil when God made us seed throwers.
Yeah.
Just toss the
Man,
seed.
that'll preach. Come on now.
Just toss the seed. And let the seed. Go ahead, bro.
You mentioned, I think early on, like, what are some of the things that break with rapid church growth? And like evangelism, 100%, man. Because it's like, well, we got people now. We don't have to worry about it. But like, so I'm also a certified church revitalization consultant, right? So I've dealt with some sick churches.
Yeah.
And, it's like one of the ones that comes to mind is, there was an evangelism problem, but sort of to your point about praying for people, like they actually had a prayer problem. Like they stopped praying. They didn't know how to pray. They weren't equipped to pray. So it's like, how can we reach our community when we don't even know how to pray for our community? It's like, again, I think we just, over time, we kind of get comfortable and we have no clue how far behind some people are. And it's, it's our job as believers, as church leaders, pastors, to really help them come along wherever they're at, right? Not to judge them, but to be like, man, I didn't realize that was that's a blind spot of mine. I had no clue. Like I thought we pray in service every Sunday, that you just kind of picked it up, right?
Right.
And so sometimes these solutions can be so practical and basic, but it's like the basics are important. I mean, right? When you go in sports, they teach the fundamentals, right? Because the fundamentals are fundamental. But when you've been a pastor for 20 years, I think you kind of forget, like, oh, there's some folks that need some fundamentals. We all need them.
Come on, man. We all need the fundamentals. And personally, I was a part of that church that did that. And our church overnight, we didn't have church growth tactics or hacks or anything like that in North Little Rock, Arkansas, at New Hope Baptist Church. But we did have a strategy and a plan to impact our community, to your point, to which we were called to. And so we prayed. We spent weeks, revivals, praying. And then we did our massive ask to ask them to come to church. But not before we prayed. And I would even say we serve behind that prayer, right? Because people now need to see the hands and feet of Christ in real time. Man, they've been praying. They've been over there. They've come to the neighborhood. They didn't ask for anything. They've done car washes. They fed people. They've done all the necessary things. And this is, let me return the favor. And now it becomes, because this is the part of growth hacking and church growth strategy, because most of it is transactional. It's not relational, right? Yeah. Because we're trying to get you in the, we change our whole website mechanisms. We change everything just to get your eyeballs and butts to the seats. And it's like, hey, bro, the main thing is we can't remove the human experience. We need God to move through the relationships and not us be transactional. Tyler, we are surpassing our time. A couple of things I want to do before
we can talk all day.
Yeah, I know, bro. We might have to go before I tune it in. This is rich. A couple of things I want to do. One, where can people connect, find, partner with you and the things that you're doing? Let's start there.
Yeah. So firmfoundationsmarketing.com is a great place to start. But also follow me on social. It's Tyler D. Harden, on any of the main platforms there. So I love chatting on social with folks and kind of getting to share some insights, answer questions, help them navigate the crazy world we live in today.
Absolutely. And so if you want to connect with Tyler, his ministry, as well as his business, please don't hesitate. Let's get that going. Take some of these tips, tools, and use them today. Again, but if you want to go deeper into that, please contact his company and partner with him, because I feel like while Tyler is behind the scenes, he's a thriving voice in this space, and we need to lift up people like you because Tyler has a heart for Christ. Some of these people have a heart for consumerism. and I can see it.
Yeah.
That's just
I
how
appreciate those kind words, DK. That really means a lot. Just hearing that from you. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, guys. More to come. If y'all want to see Tyler come back, put in the chat. Bring him back. Bring him back. Bring him back. And we'll see y'all later. Thanks again. Peace. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. My hope is that the podcast added value to your life. Please, please, please subscribe from your favorite application, leave us a review, and even follow us on YouTube for your up-to-date information. Thank you. Peace.